Wellbeing is a really big topic at the moment. Again, backdrop of COVID, hybrid work, human connection, team building. Wellbeing is just increasingly an important priority for teams and businesses and organizations, wherever you are. And it strikes me that art is often one of the things that people can go to, whether it's creating art or looking at art, to help with well-being. So can you, as a practicing artist, can you just sort of share your experiences with, what has creating art done for yourself in terms of well-being, and how do you relate to art and well-being?
Well, I think first and foremost, creating art is very therapeutic. Whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, it's gonna come out. Even if I have an intention of creating something, if I want to create something and I'm in a bad place, that's gonna come out. I mean, I can always go back at it and redo, but it's gonna come out that way where if you're the person, the audience member viewing the artwork, it's giving you the opportunity to kind of sit back and reflect on the piece of artwork and see how you relate to it, or how it makes you feel, or how it makes you think. One of the ways I explain artwork is, if you look at a painting, you're looking at the end result, but that's just the end of the book. So if you think about a book, you've got the intro, chapter 1 to chapter 12. Right? And there's a progression. And, just as writers and authors, they're telling a story, and yes, they're going back and editing and constantly refreshing. And you can see that in a book because you're seeing the progression from the intro to the end. With art, you're only seeing the end. You're not seeing the intro and the story being told. You're just seeing the end of the story. You didn't see the process. Unless nowadays, a lot of artists are starting to share that process with the introduction of social media and Instagram and showing photos and videos. They're starting to give you blippets of the different chapters that in the past, before social media and cameras and audio, you didn't get to see that background before. You only saw the ending.
That's actually a really interesting analogy, because for me, that connection over into well-being, especially if we're going through a particular emotion at a point in time, right? That in some ways, this is my correlation, right? So take this, compared to your experience as you like. But in some ways, that feeling right there is like the end point, right? That's the image that's coming to mind for me, that actually the process of getting to that point is, there's a lot that's involved in that. Yeah. And so just like, as you said, artwork represents the end point of a story, which might be an emotional or creative story, so too, if I'm engaging with someone and I see a presentation of them and they're having a frustrated day, and I get this angry person, I might just go, oh, that person is angry all the time. Yeah. But actually, there is a deeper connection behind it. There could be a bunch of different stories that contributed to why that person presented the way they are.
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of those topics, I guess, you can say, in politics nowadays. I mean, you look at the news stories and you see some of the stories of people getting angry and why they're marching. They didn't all of a sudden decide one day, hey, we're gonna march and we're gonna fight. It was a lead up of events that led to people coming together to protest. And that's the same thing with art. We're coming back to all these outside factors of being human and stuff, and same with art. Even though they might have a clear idea, they're going to be influenced by outside factors, whether it's conscious or subconscious, and that's going to affect their artwork. Now with social media, you're starting to see the different layers, and I think with artwork as well, you've as artists, they do have some hurdles. Some are very articulate and able to really explain their artwork, and it's a gift that they have, being able to articulate their story with the physical representation in the artwork. But not all artists have that same, same talent in telling that story. They have a great end result, but they have maybe an obstacle of communication that they haven't been able to tell you the whole story. So I think with well-being and artwork, we're starting to connect and tell people's stories, whether they're the artist, whether they're the audience member. We're starting to see more, starting to understand more.
I recall you mentioning in a conversation earlier around this idea of releasing repressed emotions and how art can do something like that. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by that?
I mean, you think about the abstract expressionist movement in the States after World War II. World War II was really a shock to the world, especially from the modern technology, machine guns, and the ability to kill people at high volumes. Whereas before, it was very hand-to-hand combat, a lot of interaction and killing in past wars. World War II was more innovative, it was more brutal, and it was a shock to humanity, the amount of casualties, which, because of it, greatly affected people. They couldn't be emotionally involved in the situation. They had to repress a lot of feelings to survive that wartime. Otherwise, you'd gone crazy, and a lot of people did. But then all those soldiers came back from war, a lot of them depressed. Some of them got into alcohol abuse, drug abuse. It caused a ripple effect. They had a lot of those repressed emotions, and a lot of it was starting to come out. And you look at the abstract expressionist movement, where it started to create an outlet where people could take those repressed emotions, those emotions that you can't see any physical identity. You can see representations. I'm happy, I smile, I'm sad, I frown. But you can't actually see people's emotions. We don't know if people are depressed inside because they might be wearing a smile on the outside. And I think they've covered this in well-being seminars. But with the abstract expressionist movement, people were starting to give a physical representation and identity to the emotions, and a lot of that splashing and splattering of paint was then getting those repressed emotions out. Jackson Pollock is a great example of that. There's quite a few artists from that movement, and that's that time.
No, thank you for sharing. And that, I find these contextual story points or history points in that context is really, really helpful, because I think, to your earlier point about how artwork often represents that snapshot, it's done. What we see is the end result. Mm-hmm. And so many people who are not artists would look at that and just go, this is just a splash. But go deeper into that, and it's actually, there's a process of emotions that bring people to that point. And it might be that at that time, the person just is unable to try and express that as words or as a perfect picture. And it's like, this is the way that I need to express. And I think that again relates to an earlier topic that we discussed around human-centeredness and human places, which is that people will express themselves in different ways. Yeah. And so too will people relate to different artworks in different ways. There is not a one-size-fits-all, because there is no one-size-fits-all humans.
No.